All right, here's lesson 3, graphing functions. So, step 1, we want to create an XY chart. There will be a lot of rules or a lot of special functions that we learn more clever ways to graph, but you can always make an XY chart or a T chart. So just think of the f of x as your y. That's why I crossed it out there. And make an XY chart. So for this one, we can pick anything we want to plug in. But let's be intelligent about how we do that. Since we're going to be multiplying by a 1/2, it would make sense to use numbers that when multiplied by a half will give me a whole number. So basically things that are multiples of 2, multiples of the denominator. That way, when I multiply these numbers, I'll get whole numbers that'll be easier to graph. Also, we want to have positives and negatives. Keep the numbers small enough to deal with here on our little graph. So here's our f of x, means we are plugging our x into this function. So this function says that we take x and multiply it by -1/2, then add 2. So that's what I've written over here. And then into that, we're plugging the 4. And that calculates to 0. So we're doing the same thing for each input value. Plug in a 2, I get 1. Plug in a 0, I get a 2. Plug in a -2, I get a 3. Plug in a -4, I get a 4. And then plotting those x-y pairs gives us this. Now in this case, I can and in fact should draw a line that connects all those points because I just picked these 5 points here. I could have picked any number. So there's an infinite number of inputs, therefore an infinite number of outputs. So this should be a continuous line, and the arrows tell us that that goes on forever in each direction. In our next example, doesn't make sense to use any negative numbers. So I'll start at 0 because you're not going to get negative hours of renting a truck. And then I'm going to go up by 1s. I think that makes the most sense. And then, some places might do per hour or fractions of an hour, but probably not. Most are going to do whole hours. So we plug our values in, compute, and then on this one, we got to come up with an appropriate scale. I got to get up to at least 67.5. So label our axes, because there's a context to the problem to do so. And then for here, I want to get up to at least 100 to include the points that I chose. So I got to do every box is 10 on the y-axis. All right, and then I can't see exactly where these are, but I can approximate it, and we see that there's a linear pattern. And I noticed that if I plugged in a 4, I'd get an 80, so that's a really nice point right there. Now, if I'm going to continue this, I can't really draw a line through it because they're not going to charge me for every little fraction, infinitely small fraction of an hour. They'll just charge you by the hour, so you go over by 10 minutes, they're going to charge you for the whole hour. So you could continue the pattern up at the same rate.